In the bustling city of Kumasi, where the modern world met ancient traditions, lived a young man named Sobi. Sobi was well known in his neighborhood for his kindness and ever-present smile. He lived in a modest apartment with his mother, who had raised him alone after his father passed away when Sobi was just a child. Every morning, Sobi would help his mother at her small shop in the market, selling handmade crafts and trinkets. One fateful day, as he arranged the display of colorful beads, his eyes caught sight of a girl he had never seen before. She moved gracefully through the market, her presence exuding a blend of confidence and warmth. Her name was Angel, and she had recently moved to Kumasi to live with her aunt. Sobi was instantly captivated by Angel's beauty and poise. He watched as she chatted amiably with the vendors, her laughter like music to his ears. From that moment on, Sobi's thoughts were consumed by her. He found himself daydreaming about her smile, her laugh, and the way she made everything around her seem brighter. Unbeknownst to Sobi, his childhood friend Abraham had been quietly harboring feelings for him. Abraham had always been by Sobi's side, through thick and thin, their bond forged in the fires of shared dreams and childhood escapades. Abraham had never mustered the courage to confess his feelings, contenting himself with the warmth of their friendship. As the days passed, Sobi's infatuation with Angel grew. He began to neglect his responsibilities at the shop, often losing himself in thoughts of her. He would stand on the busy street corners where he knew she passed, hoping for a chance to speak to her. Finally, one sunny afternoon, Sobi gathered his courage and approached Angel as she admired a stall of colorful kente cloths. "Hi, I'm Sobi," he said, his voice trembling slightly. "I see you around the market a lot. Would you like to have a coffee with me sometime?" Angel smiled warmly, appreciating his straightforwardness. "Hi, Sobi. I'm Angel. Sure, I'd like that." They started meeting regularly, sharing stories and laughs over steaming cups of coffee at a small cafe near the market. Sobi's heart soared with every moment spent with Angel, and he began to hope that she might feel the same way about him. However, in his excitement and newfound obsession, he started to neglect Abraham. Abraham felt the growing distance between them and was heartbroken. He had always been the one Sobi turned to, but now he felt like a shadow in Sobi's life. Whenever they did meet, Sobi seemed distracted, his mind elsewhere. The once strong bond between them began to fray. One evening, after spending the day with Angel, Sobi found Abraham waiting for him outside his apartment. Abraham's eyes were filled with unspoken hurt. "Sobi, can we talk?" Abraham asked quietly. Sobi, still riding the high of his time with Angel, was impatient. "Not now, Abraham, I'm tired." "Please, it's important," Abraham insisted. Reluctantly, Sobi agreed. They went up to the rooftop, where they often used to sit and talk under the stars. Abraham took a deep breath and finally confessed his feelings. "Sobi, I've loved you for as long as I can remember. I've tried to be happy just being your friend, but it's been so hard watching you drift away from me." Sobi was stunned. He had never considered that Abraham's feelings for him might go beyond friendship. He felt a rush of emotions, confusion, guilt, and a pang of regret for the way he had treated his friend. But instead of addressing Abraham's confession with compassion, he reacted defensively. "Why are you telling me this now, Abraham? Can't you see I'm happy with Angel? Why are you trying to complicate things?" Abraham's eyes filled with tears. "I just needed you to know the truth. I can't keep pretending that I'm okay with things as they are." Sobi, overwhelmed by the revelation and his own conflicted feelings, lashed out. "Well, maybe you should have kept it to yourself. I've got enough on my mind without dealing with this." Abraham, deeply hurt by Sobi's harsh words, left the rooftop in silence. He felt as though his heart had been shattered into 1,000 pieces. In the days that followed, Sobi couldn't shake the guilt gnawing at him. He continued to spend time with Angel, but the joy he once felt was tainted by his regret over how he had treated Abraham. He tried to push the thoughts away, focusing instead on winning Angel's heart completely. One day, as Sobi and Angel walked through the city park, they ran into a young man who seemed very familiar to Sobi. It was Kwame, a charming and confident guy who had a reputation for being popular with the ladies. Sobe watched with growing jealousy as Kwame and Angel exchanged pleasantries and laughed together. After Kwame left, Sobe's jealousy boiled over. "Do you like him?" he blurted out, his voice tinged with insecurity. Angel looked at him, surprised by his sudden outburst. "What? Kwame? He's just a friend, Sobe. Why would you even ask that?" Sobe's jealousy and insecurity had been festering for days, and now they erupted uncontrollably. "I see the way you look at him. You're probably just leading me on while you're really interested in him." Angel was taken aback, her expression turning from confusion to hurt. "Sobe, you're being ridiculous. I thought you trusted me." Sobe realized he had crossed a line, but his pride kept him from apologizing. Instead, he doubled down. "Maybe I was wrong to trust you. Maybe I was wrong about everything." Angel's face hardened with resolve. "If you can't trust me, Sobe, then there's no point in us being together. I don't need this kind of negativity in my life." With that, she walked away, leaving Sobe standing alone in the park, his heart heavy with the weight of his mistakes. Days turned into weeks, and Sobe found himself increasingly isolated. He had lost Angel, and his friendship with Abraham was in tatters. The elders of his community, having noticed the change in him, called him for a meeting. They were wise and experienced, having seen many young people lose their way. "Sobe," one of the elders began, "we've watched you grow up with a good heart, but recently you have allowed jealousy and anger to cloud your judgment. You must understand that true love and friendship are built on trust and respect." Another elder added, "There is an old story of Anansi the spider who once deceived his friends and ended up trapped in his own web. If you do not mend your ways, you will find yourself trapped in a web of your own making." Their words struck a chord with Sobe. He realized how far he had strayed from the values he had been raised with. Determined to make amends, he sought out Abraham first. He found him at their old hangout spot, the rooftop where they had shared so many memories. "Abraham," Sobe began, his voice trembling with emotion, "I am so sorry for the way I treated you. I was selfish and blind to your feelings. Can you ever forgive me?" Abraham looked at Sobe, his eyes reflecting a mixture of hurt and hope. "Sobe, it will take time to heal, but I appreciate your apology. I miss our friendship, and I'm willing to try and rebuild it if you are." Sobe nodded, relief washing over him. "I am. I'll do whatever it takes." With their friendship slowly on the mend, Sobe turned his attention to Angel. He knew winning back her trust would be even harder. He wrote her a heartfelt letter, explaining his actions and expressing his deep regret. He left the letter at her aunt's house, hoping she would read it. A few days later, Angel agreed to meet him at the cafe where they had spent so many happy hours. Sobe's heart raced as he walked in, unsure of what to expect. Angel sat at their usual table, her expression unreadable. "I read your letter," she said, her voice calm but guarded. "I appreciate your honesty, but trust is not something that can be easily restored." Sobe nodded, his eyes earnest. "I know, Angel. I messed up, and I'm willing to do whatever it takes to prove that I'm worthy of your trust. I let my insecurities get the best of me, and I regret every moment of it." Angel sighed, her eyes softening slightly. "Sobe, I need time. Trust is built with consistent actions, not just words." "I understand," Sobe replied. "I'll be here, waiting. I just want you to know that I've learned from my mistakes, and I'm working on becoming a better person." As weeks turned into months, Sobe dedicated himself to proving his sincerity. He mended his friendship with Abraham, making sure to be there for him, just as Abraham had always been there for him. He focused on his responsibilities at his mother's shop, helping her and the community. Gradually, Angel saw the changes in Sobe. His actions spoke louder than his words ever could. He was patient, kind, and considerate, showing her that he had truly learned from his mistakes. Slowly, she began to let him back into her life. One evening, as the sun set over Kumasi, casting a warm golden glow over the city, Angel and Sobe walked through the market together. They stopped at the cafe, sitting at their favorite table. "Sobe," Angel began, "I've seen how hard you've worked to change. I'm willing to give us another chance, but you need to understand that this is a fresh start. We can't go back to the way things were, but we can move forward." Sobe's heart swelled with gratitude and hope. "Thank you, Angel. I promise to cherish and respect you. I've learned that love is not just about feelings, but actions and trust." As the weeks turned into months, Sobe and Angel rebuilt their relationship on a stronger foundation. Sobe continued to nurture his friendship with Abraham, who had found his own path to healing. The three of them often spent time together, their bonds strengthened by the trials they had overcome. One day, as they sat together on the rooftop that held so many memories, Sobe looked at his friends and realized how much he had grown. He had learned that love, in all its forms, required patience, understanding, and respect. The elder's words echoed in his mind. True love and friendship are built on trust and respect. Sobe knew now that these were the pillars upon which a happy life was built. He felt a deep sense of gratitude for the lessons he had learned and the people who had stood by him. The bustling city of Kumasi continued to thrive, its streets filled with the sounds of life and laughter. And among the many stories that wove the fabric of the city, the tale of Sobe, Angel, and Abraham became a cherished one. It was a story of growth, forgiveness, and the enduring power of love and friendship. As they looked out over the city, the sun setting in a blaze of colors, Sobe spoke, his voice filled with emotion. "Thank you, both of you, for your forgiveness, your patience, and your love. I wouldn't be who I am today without you." Angel smiled, her eyes shining with warmth. "And we wouldn't be here without you, Sobe. We've all grown and learned together." Abraham nodded, a contented smile on his face. "Here's to the future and to the strength of our bond." And so, under the golden hues of the setting sun, Sobe, Angel, and Abraham embraced the future with hearts full of hope and a friendship that had weathered the storm and come out stronger on the other side. The story of their journey spread through the community, inspiring others to value trust and respect in their relationships. It became a lesson for the young and a reminder for the old that love, in all its forms, requires nurturing and care. In the end, Sobe's tale was a testament to the resilience of the human spirit and the power of forgiveness, proving that even in the heart of a bustling city, the values of trust, respect, and love could transform lives and create unbreakable bonds.
In the bustling city of Accra, where the sounds of traffic mingled with the rhythm of street vendors calling out their wares, lived two inseparable friends, Kofi and Amali. From the moment they could walk, they were seen together, exploring the city's crowded markets, climbing the old fig trees in the park, and playing by the seashore. The city dwellers often smiled, watching the duo's antics, their bond as strong as the ancient roots of the baobab trees that stood in the city's heart. Kofi, with his quick wit and infectious laughter, was the dreamer. He often spoke of far-off lands and adventures beyond the city. Amali, on the other hand, was the steady rock, his calm demeanor and practical mind grounding Kofi's flights of fancy. Together, they balanced each other perfectly, their friendship a beacon of pure, untainted joy. As they grew older, their bond only deepened. They attended the same school, learning the stories and wisdom of their ancestors. On weekends, they helped their families, Kofi in his father's tailor shop and Amali in his mother's cafe. Their conversations were filled with dreams of the future. Kofi often talked about becoming a storyteller, traveling from city to city, sharing tales of wonder and mystery. Amali dreamed of becoming a healer, using the knowledge passed down from his grandmother to help the sick and needy. Their days were filled with adventures, from building makeshift rafts to sail on the ocean to sneaking into the abandoned buildings, said to be haunted by spirits. One of their favorite spots was the old lighthouse at the edge of the city. It was said to be haunted, but Kofi and Amali loved to climb to the top and watch the sunset. The world spread out beneath them in a tapestry of colors and sounds. As the years passed, Kofi began to notice a change within himself. He felt a deepening affection for Amali, an emotion that went beyond friendship. At first, he tried to ignore it, brushing it off as a phase. But the feelings persisted, growing stronger with each passing day. Kofi found himself yearning for Amali's touch, his presence, in a way that confused and frightened him. In the city, such feelings were rarely spoken of. The elders upheld traditions and societal norms that left little room for deviation. Kofi was torn between his feelings and the fear of rejection and ostracism. He tried to suppress his emotions, convincing himself that his friendship with Amali was enough. One evening, as the sun set behind the high-rise buildings, painting the sky in hues of orange and pink, Kofi could no longer keep his feelings hidden. He and Amali sat by the seashore, their usual spot, watching the waves crash against the rocks. The scent of salt and the sound of distant music from the street performers filled the air. Kofi's heart pounded in his chest as he turned to his friend. "Amali, there's something I need to tell you," he began, his voice trembling. Amali looked at him, concern etched on his face. "What is it, Kofi? You can tell me anything." Kofi took a deep breath, the words tumbling out in a rush. "I love you, Amali. Not just as a friend, but something more. I felt this way for a long time, and I can't keep it inside anymore." Amali stared at him, stunned into silence. The seconds stretched into what felt like an eternity. Finally, he spoke, his voice barely above a whisper. "Kofi, I don't know what to say. I care about you deeply, but I've never thought of you in that way." The tension between them was palpable. Kofi felt a crushing weight in his chest, the fear of losing his best friend overwhelming him. Word of Kofi's confession soon spread through the city, fueled by whispers and rumors. The city dwellers, steeped in tradition, reacted with shock and disapproval. Kofi and Amali found themselves at the center of a storm they had not anticipated. Their families, too, were caught in the turmoil. Kofi's parents, proud and respected members of the community, were heartbroken. Amali's family, known for their healing arts, faced scrutiny and pressure to distance themselves from Kofi. Amali's mother's cafe, once bustling with customers, began to see fewer visitors, as people whispered and pointed fingers. Kofi and Amali tried to navigate the confusion and pain, but their friendship began to fray. Amali, torn between his loyalty to Kofi and the expectations of the city, grew distant. Kofi, feeling increasingly isolated, struggled with his emotions, unsure of where to turn. The situation reached a breaking point during the city's annual festival, the Festival of Lights, a time of celebration where the streets were adorned with colorful lanterns, music filled the air, and fireworks lit up the night sky. But the tension between Kofi and Amali cast a shadow over the festivities. An argument erupted between them during the lantern release, a moment meant for wishes and unity. In the heat of the moment, harsh words were exchanged, words that could not be taken back. Kofi accused Amali of abandoning him when he needed him the most. Amali, feeling the weight of societal expectations, lashed out, blaming Kofi for ruining everything. The confrontation was witnessed by many, and the rift between them became public knowledge. The friendship that had once been a source of joy and strength lay in ruins, shattered by the weight of unspoken emotions and societal pressure. In the weeks that followed, Kofi withdrew from the city, spending his days by the seashore, lost in thought. The once vibrant, adventurous boy was now a shadow of his former self. Amali, too, struggled, grappling with guilt and confusion. He threw himself into his studies, trying to find solace in healing others. But the weight of the past remained with him. The city, divided in its opinions, eventually moved on. But the impact of Kofi and Amali's story lingered. It became a cautionary tale, a reminder of the fragile nature of friendship and the consequences of defying societal norms. Their favorite spots, like the old lighthouse and the seashore, became places of somber reflection for those who knew their story. Kofi and Amali's paths diverged, their once inseparable bond now a distant memory. Kofi left the city, seeking solace and a fresh start in a distant land. He traveled from town to town, sharing stories and seeking new beginnings. Amali stayed, continuing his training as a healer, but the weight of the past remained with him. He became known as a skilled healer, but those who looked closely could see the sadness in his eyes. Their story became a part of the city's folklore, passed down through generations. It was a tale of love and loss, of courage and heartache. It served as a reminder of the complexities of human emotions and the enduring impact of friendship. In the end, Kofi and Amali found their own paths, shaped by their experiences. Their friendship, though shattered, left an indelible mark on their hearts and the city they once called home. Their story, a poignant reminder of the power of love and the pain of loss, lived on in the memories of those who heard it, a testament to the enduring human spirit.
Subscribe for more exciting African folktales, and thanks for watching. Bye, my beautiful family.
What if Chidi wasn't interested in men? What if this whole thing was a disaster waiting to happen? As much as Tunda wanted to express his feelings, he couldn't shake the fear that things would end badly. Tunda had always been an ordinary young man living in the bustling city of Lagos. His days were filled with the familiar routines of work, hanging out with friends, and attending family gatherings. But something had been stirring inside him, a feeling he could not fully understand or express. One sunny afternoon, while browsing the aisles of a local grocery store, everything changed. That's when he first laid eyes on Chidi, his neighbor from down the street. Chidi wasn't just another person in the crowd. He stood out to Tunda. Tall, charismatic, and confident, Chidi exuded a charm that left Tunda completely mesmerized. As Chidi reached for an item on the top shelf, Tunda felt his heart race. The attraction was undeniable, but it brought with it a confusion that clouded his thoughts. How could he feel this way about another man? Tunda wasn't sure what these emotions meant or how to act on them. But one thing was clear. He had to meet Chidi, to speak to him, even if it was just to break the ice. It was a bold step, and Tunda knew he couldn't hold back any longer. After a few deep breaths, Tunda gathered his courage and walked over to Chidi. His palms were sweaty and his heart pounded in his chest, but he managed to introduce himself. "Hi, I'm Tunda. I've seen you around. You're my neighbor, right?" Chidi looked up, smiled warmly, and responded, "Yeah, I've seen you too. Nice to finally meet you." For a moment, Tunda's nerves settled, soothed by Chidi's friendliness. But behind his easy smile, Tunda's mind was racing. He had never felt so drawn to someone before, and the intensity of his feelings made him uneasy. As they exchanged pleasantries, Tunda fought to keep his composure. Part of him wanted to express the flood of emotions he was experiencing, but another part told him to hold back. After all, how could he possibly explain what was going on in his head? He had no roadmap for this kind of attraction, no example to follow, so he kept the conversation light. And before he knew it, Chidi was waving goodbye, leaving Tunde standing alone in the grocery aisle, his feelings unresolved. After the encounter at the grocery store, Tunda couldn't stop thinking about Chidi. His mind replayed the scene over and over, analyzing every word, every smile. Was Chidi just being friendly? Or did he sense Tunda's attraction? Did he feel something too? These thoughts consumed Tunda as he lay in bed that night staring at the ceiling. He had never felt this way before. Confused, excited, and terrified all at once. Days passed, and Tunde found himself watching for any sign of Chidi. He would walk by Chidi's house on his way to work, hoping for a glimpse of him. Every time he saw Chidi from afar, his heart would skip a beat. Tunda began to realize that he wasn't just physically attracted to Chidi. He wanted to get to know him better, to be closer to him. But how could he bridge the gap between friendly neighbor and something more? The thought of confessing his feelings terrified him, but keeping them hidden felt like an impossible burden. Unable to shake his growing feelings, Tunda decided to take small steps to get closer to Chidi. He started by offering to help with little things, like carrying groceries or helping with household tasks. One afternoon, as they both arrived home at the same time, Tunda casually offered to carry Chidi's bags. Chidi smiled and accepted the offer, thanking him with that same warm friendliness that always made Tunda's heart race. The more time Tunda spent around Chidi, the more his attraction deepened. He found himself laughing at Chidi's jokes, enjoying the way he carried himself with confidence and ease. But despite these small interactions, Tunda could never bring himself to say what he truly felt. He feared that speaking the truth would ruin everything, and so he continued to hide behind casual conversation and small gestures, hoping that Chidi might somehow sense his deeper emotions. As weeks passed, Tunda found himself increasingly torn between his growing affection for Chidi and the fear of rejection. It wasn't just about whether Chidi would return his feelings. Tunda was grappling with his own identity. He had never considered himself to be anything but a regular guy. The idea of being attracted to another man was new, unsettling, and something he wasn't sure how to process. Each time he saw Chidi, the conflict within him intensified. Part of Tunda wanted to push these feelings aside, to return to the familiar safety of his previous life. But another part of him knew that suppressing these emotions wouldn't make them go away. The more he tried to deny them, the stronger they became. It was becoming harder and harder to keep his true feelings a secret. In an attempt to spend more time with Chidi, Tunda decided to invite him to a local event, a community concert that was happening over the weekend. With his heart pounding in his chest, Tunde knocked on Chidi's door and extended the invitation. "Hey, I was wondering if you'd like to come to this concert with me on Saturday. It should be fun." Chidi hesitated for a moment, but then smiled and agreed. "Sure, why not? Sounds like a good time." Tunde could hardly believe his luck. Chidi had said yes. For the rest of the week, Tunde's anticipation grew. He couldn't wait to spend more time with Chidi, to get to know him better, and maybe, just maybe, find the right moment to confess his feelings. But even as excitement bubbled inside him, Tunda couldn't shake the nagging doubt that this might not go the way he hoped. The night of the concert arrived, and Tunda was a bundle of nerves. He had spent the entire day overthinking every possible outcome of the evening. What if Chidi picked up on his feelings? What if he reacted badly? Or worse, what if Chidi had absolutely no idea how much Tunde liked him? As he stood outside waiting for Chidi to join him, Tunde tried to steady his nerves. This was just a concert, he reminded himself. No need to complicate things. When Chidi finally arrived, Tunda couldn't help but smile. Dressed casually, but still looking effortlessly handsome, Chidi greeted Tunda with a grin. "You ready for this?" Chidi asked, and Tunda nodded, his heart racing. As they walked to the concert together, Tunda tried to keep the conversation light, but his mind was elsewhere. Every glance from Chidi, every laugh they shared, made his feelings grow stronger. By the time they arrived at the concert, Tunda realized something important. He couldn't keep hiding how he felt forever. The concert was lively, with music filling the air and people dancing around them. Tunda and Chidi stood among the crowd, enjoying the performance. But Tunda's mind was far from the music. Every now and then, Chidi would brush against him or lean in to say something, and Tunda's heart would flutter. He kept telling himself that this was the perfect moment to confess his feelings, to finally get the weight off his chest. But as the night wore on, Tunda couldn't bring himself to say the words. Every time he thought he was ready, fear held him back. What if Chidi didn't feel the same? What if this ruined their budding friendship? Tunda realized that he was at a crossroads. But for now, he chose the safer path of silence. As they walked home after the concert, Tunda knew he had missed his chance. Again. But the fear of rejection weighed too heavily on his heart. Over the next few days, the tension between Tunda and his own emotions only grew. His friendship with Chidi had become more comfortable, but underneath the surface, Tunda's feelings continued to churn. Every time they hung out, every time Chidi flashed that easy smile, Tunda's attraction deepened. But the longer he waited to speak, the more anxious he became about what might happen if Chidi found out how he truly felt. Tunda started to wonder if Chidi had noticed anything. Could he sense the way Tunda lingered just a little too long during their conversations? Did he see the way Tunda's eyes would light up whenever he was around? It became harder and harder to keep up the act, to pretend that his feelings were nothing more than simple friendship. Tunda knew that eventually, something would have to give. Tunda found himself at a crossroads. His emotions were becoming too intense to ignore, but the fear of rejection kept him paralyzed. What if Chidi wasn't interested in men? What if this whole thing was a disaster waiting to happen? As much as Tunda wanted to express his feelings, he couldn't shake the fear that things would end badly. He decided to confide in his close friend Ayo one evening over a few drinks. Ayo had always been understanding, and Tunda knew he could trust him with this secret. "There's this guy," Tunda started, feeling the weight of the confession. "He's our neighbor, Chidi. I like him, but I don't know what to do about it." Ayo listened carefully, offering his support. "Man, that's tough, but you can't keep this to yourself forever. You either tell him, or you'll be stuck wondering what if for the rest of your life." Ayo's words stuck with Tunda for days. He knew his friend was right. Living with this secret was becoming unbearable, and the longer he waited, the harder it would be to confront Chidi. Tunda spent hours replaying every moment they had shared, wondering if there had been any hint, any sign that Chidi might feel the same way. But no matter how hard he tried, Tunda couldn't be sure. Finally, Tunda made a decision. He couldn't keep living like this. He had to tell Chidi how he felt, even if it meant risking everything. It was the only way to move forward, to get closure, or perhaps even open the door to something more. Tunda rehearsed the words in his head, trying to find the perfect way to express his feelings without making things awkward or uncomfortable. It was going to be the hardest thing he had ever done, but he knew it had to be done. On a quiet evening, Tunda invited Chidi over under the pretense of watching a movie together. As they sat on the couch, Tunda could barely focus on the film. His heart was pounding, and the words he had rehearsed over and over were stuck in his throat. After a few minutes of awkward silence, Tunda couldn't take it anymore. He paused the movie and turned to Chidi. "Chidi, I need to talk to you about something," Tunda began, his voice shaky. Chidi looked over, his expression curious but relaxed. Tunda took a deep breath. "I don't know how to say this, but I like you. I've liked you for a while now, and I've been afraid to tell you because I didn't know how you'd react." The words hung in the air, and for a moment, time seemed to stand still. Chidi's smile faded, replaced by a look of surprise and confusion. Chidi's reaction wasn't what Tunda had hoped for. His expression shifted from surprise to discomfort, and Tunda could see the tension in his body language. "Tunda, I don't know what to say," Chidi began, his voice careful. "I appreciate you being honest with me, but I'm not into guys. I had no idea you felt this way, and I'm sorry if I ever gave you the wrong impression." Tunda's heart sank. He had expected rejection, but hearing the words still hurt more than he anticipated. Chidi continued, his tone growing more serious. "I think you're a great guy, Tunda, but this isn't something I'm comfortable with. I hope we can still be friends, but I need you to understand that this isn't going to happen." The rejection hit Tunda hard. He had braced himself for the possibility, but the reality of it was far more painful than he had imagined. Chidi's words echoed in his mind, leaving him feeling exposed and vulnerable. After Chidi left that evening, Tunda sat alone in his apartment, replaying the conversation over and over. He couldn't believe that he had finally mustered the courage to confess his feelings, only to be met with rejection. For days, Tunde withdrew into himself, avoiding Chidi and struggling with the aftermath of his failed confession. The pain of rejection was compounded by the fear that he had ruined their friendship for good. He had taken a risk, but now he was left wondering if it had been worth it. In the days following his confession, Tunda found it increasingly difficult to maintain his composure. Every time he saw Chidi around the neighborhood, he felt a pang of regret and awkwardness. Chidi had been polite enough, but the distance between them was undeniable. What was once an easy friendship now felt strained, filled with an uncomfortable silence that neither of them dared to address. Tunda did his best to avoid crossing paths with Chidi, but in a small, bustling neighborhood, that wasn't always possible. He would spot Chidi from a distance, chatting with other neighbors or running errands, and each time, Tunda felt a sharp ache in his chest. How could something that had seemed so promising now feel like an unbearable weight? He missed the way things used to be, but he knew that nothing could ever go back to normal. Feeling lost, Tunda sought solace in his friend Ayo once again. One evening, they met up for drinks at a local bar, and Tunda poured out his heart. "I told him Ayo," Tunda said, staring at his drink. "I told Chidi how I felt, and he rejected me. He said he's not into guys and didn't know I felt that way." Ayo listened quietly, giving Tunda the space to vent his frustration and pain. "That's rough, man," Ayo finally said. "But at least you told him. You were brave enough to be honest with yourself and with him. Not everyone can do that." Tunde nodded, but the words didn't bring much comfort. "I just don't know how to move on from this. I feel like I've messed everything up, and now I've lost him as a friend too." Ayo offered a sympathetic smile. "It'll take time, but you've taken the first step. Now it's about figuring out how to move forward, whether that's healing on your own or finding a way to rebuild the friendship." Over the next few weeks, Tunda spent a lot of time reflecting on his life and his feelings. The rejection had forced him to confront not just his unrequited love for Chidi, but also his own identity. For the first time, Tunda allowed himself to fully acknowledge his attraction to men, something he had never been able to put into words before. It wasn't easy. There were moments when he felt overwhelmed by confusion and shame, but he knew he couldn't keep running from himself. Tunda began to see that Chidi's rejection, painful as it was, had pushed him toward a deeper understanding of who he really was. He realized that his feelings for Chidi were just a small part of a much larger journey, one that involved accepting himself, no matter how difficult that might be. It was a long, winding road, but Tunda knew that he had to walk it, even if he had to do it alone. As time passed, Tunda found himself slowly coming to terms with the situation. He and Chidi had continued to maintain a polite distance, but one evening, as Tunda was coming home from work, he unexpectedly ran into Chidi on the street. There was an awkward pause, and for a moment, neither of them knew what to say. Chidi was the first to break the silence. "Hey Tunda, we haven't talked in a while. How have you been?" His tone was casual, but there was an underlying sincerity that Tunda hadn't expected. Tunda hesitated before responding. I've been okay. You? Chidi nodded, and for the first time in weeks, they exchanged a few more words. It wasn't the easygoing banter they used to share, but it was a step toward rebuilding some form of connection. As they parted ways, Tunda realized that maybe, just maybe, they could find a way to be friends again. But this time, it would be on new terms, and Tunda knew he had to be okay with that. Tunda began to focus on rebuilding his life, accepting that his romantic hopes for Chidi were over. The process wasn't easy. He still had moments of sadness and regret. But he was slowly learning to accept that not every story ends in a happy romance. Sometimes, the real journey is the one of self-discovery. He started to focus on the things that made him happy outside of his feelings for Chidi. His job, his hobbies, and spending time with friends like Ayo, who had supported him through it all. Tunda also realized that part of moving forward meant accepting that his feelings for Chidi had been one-sided. It wasn't Chidi's fault for not feeling the same way, and it wasn't a reflection of Tunda's worth. He had to learn to face that reality, as painful as it was, and let it go. As Tunda continued to grow more comfortable with himself, he began to notice that the world felt a little different. The fear and anxiety that had once clouded his every thought was starting to lift, replaced by a quiet sense of peace. Tunda wasn't completely healed, but he was on his way. He realized that accepting himself was the first step in opening up to new possibilities in life and love. One evening, as he walked home from work, Tunda spotted someone new moving into an apartment across the street. A young man around his age was unloading boxes from a car, and their eyes met briefly as Tunda walked by. The stranger smiled, and for the first time in a long while, Tunda felt a flicker of curiosity and hope. Maybe, just maybe, this was a new beginning. He didn't know what the future held, but Tunda was ready to embrace it, one step at a time. The man across the street, whose name Tunda later learned was Femi, seemed friendly and approachable. Over the next few days, they exchanged brief greetings, and Tunda found himself thinking about Femi more often than he expected. It wasn't the intense attraction he had felt for Chidi, but there was something calming about Femi's presence. One afternoon, as Tunda walked past, Femi waved him over. "Hey, I've seen you around," Femi said with a smile. "I'm Femi, just moved in a few days ago. You live around here?" Tunda introduced himself, and soon they were chatting about the neighborhood, their jobs, and the best local restaurants. It felt easy, natural. Unlike the nervousness Tunda had experienced with Chidi, this conversation flowed effortlessly. Tunda realized that maybe he was ready to start making new connections, to let go of the past and move forward. As Tunda got to know Femi better, they started hanging out more often, grabbing coffee, taking walks, or just chatting outside their apartments. Femi's easygoing nature put Tunda at ease, but he couldn't help feeling a slight hesitation. After everything that had happened with Chidi, Tunda was afraid of putting himself out there again. What if this went wrong too? What if Femi didn't feel the same way? One evening, after spending hours talking and laughing, Tunda found himself thinking about his past with Chidi. Would this end the same way? Could he really open himself up again after such a painful rejection? But as he watched Femi laugh at one of his jokes, Tunda realized something important. He didn't have to rush. He could take his time and let things unfold naturally, without the pressure of his past hanging over him. Tunda confided in Ayo once again, this time about his growing friendship with Femi. "I'm not sure what this is," Tunda said one evening over drinks. "I mean, I like Femi, But I'm afraid of getting hurt again. What if this is another Chidi situation? Ayo listened patiently, offering a supportive smile. Look, I get it. What happened with Chidi was tough, but not every situation is going to be like that. You've learned a lot about yourself since then, and you've grown. Take things slow with Vemi. You don't have to figure everything out right away. Just enjoy getting to know him and see where it goes. Tunda nodded, appreciating Ayo's wisdom. He knew Ayo was right. There was no need to rush into anything, but at the same time, Tunda felt a cautious optimism he hadn't experienced in a while. Maybe this time, things could be different. As the weeks went by, Tunda and Femi grew closer. They shared stories about their lives, their families, and their dreams for the future. Tunda found himself opening up in ways he hadn't expected, and Femi was always there to listen, offering his own stories in return. It was during one of these quiet moments, sitting together at a local cafe, that Tunda realized just how much he enjoyed Femi's company. There was no rush to define what they had, no pressure to put a label on their relationship. They were just two people enjoying each other's presence, and for the first time in a long while, Tunda felt content. He hadn't expected to meet someone like Femi, and yet, here they were, building something new and unexpected. One evening, as they walked home from a local event, Femi casually placed his hand on Tunda's shoulder. It was a small gesture, but Tunda felt a surge of warmth spread through him. Femi didn't pull away, and neither did Tunda. It was in that moment that Tunda realized there might be more to this friendship than he had initially thought. Later that night, as Tunda replayed the evening in his mind, he couldn't help but smile. He was still cautious, but the possibility of something more with Femi excited him. Maybe this wasn't going to be another story of unrequited love. Maybe this time, things could work out. One quiet evening, as they sat on the steps outside their building, Femi broke the comfortable silence between them. "Tunda, can I ask you something?" Femi's voice was soft, serious. Tunda nodded, sensing that something important was about to be said. Femi hesitated for a moment, then spoke. "I've really enjoyed getting to know you, and I don't want to make things weird, but I think I like you, more than just as a friend." Tunde's heart skipped a beat. He had been waiting for this moment, but he hadn't expected Femi to be the one to take the first step. A rush of emotions filled him. Excitement, relief, and a hint of fear. But most of all, Tunda felt a deep sense of gratitude. He had spent so much time doubting himself, worrying about rejection, and now here was Femi, opening up to him in the way he had once longed for Chidi to do. Tunda smiled, feeling the weight of his past fears begin to lift. "I like you too, Femi," he admitted. "I've been afraid to say anything because of, well, what happened before. But I don't want to rush into anything. I think we should just take things slow and see where this goes." Femi nodded, his own smile spreading across his face. "I'm good with that. We don't have to rush. Let's just enjoy this." And with that, they both relaxed into the moment, knowing that they were on the same page. It wasn't a grand declaration of love, but it was the start of something real, something genuine. Over the next few weeks, Tunda and Femi began to explore their relationship at a pace that felt comfortable for both of them. They went on casual dates, spent time getting to know each other on a deeper level, and built a foundation based on trust and mutual respect. Tund couldn't help but reflect on how different this felt from his experience with Chidi. This time, there was no hidden tension, no unspoken fears. With Femi, everything felt open and honest. Though Tunda occasionally thought about Chidi and the pain of that rejection, he realized that it no longer held power over him. He had learned from the experience, and now he was ready to move forward with Femi. It wasn't about erasing the past, but about embracing the future with someone who saw him for who he truly was. Tunda found himself growing more confident, not just in his relationship with Femi, but in his sense of self. He had come a long way from the uncertainty and fear that had once dominated his thoughts. Now he was learning to trust his own feelings and to communicate openly with the people who mattered to him. One evening, as he and Femi sat together on Tunda's balcony, watching the sunset over the city, Tunda realized how far he had come. This wasn't just about finding love, it was about finding himself. For the first time in his life, Tunda felt truly comfortable in his own skin. And that was the greatest gift of all. As Tunda looked back on the journey he had been through, he knew that it had been full of ups and downs, heartbreak and healing. But in the end, it had led him to this moment, a place of peace and acceptance, both with himself and with Femi. Tunda knew that there would still be challenges ahead, but he was ready to face them, knowing that he had grown stronger through the experience. He had discovered that love wasn't always easy, and it didn't always come in the way you expected, but it was worth the risk, the vulnerability, and the courage to keep moving forward. And as Tunda sat beside Femi, their hands intertwined, he knew that this was just the beginning of a new chapter, one filled with hope, love, and the promise of a brighter future.